What's up, everybody? My name is Jacob Hardison, and today, let's talk about shock springs. All right, so here we are back for another week of our Let's Talk series. Not taking a detour this week. We are sticking on script. Of course, last week we did go over how to bind your car, but this week we are straight back on track. I guess that's a slight play on words because we're talking about track driving, but nonetheless. All right, so today we're going to talk about springs. Now, before I get too deep into that, I want to give a reminder that we do have our mega waffle going on right now for these two lovely TLR vehicles, and it does now include this XR8 Pro Gen 3 and this USRC servo. So we've got one more week of ticket sales going on. Make sure you stay at the very end to get a little bit more information on that. Now, I've 4 weeks in a row gotten your attention. We'll set these off to the side, and then we will go ahead and talk about today's topic. So in front of me here is going to be 3 different options of springs. And the grand scheme of things for what we're talking about today, those are purely just a showpiece, other than being able to show you, oh, this is this color, this is this color. There's not really a whole lot of visual options to do this week, so it's mostly just gonna be me yapping at you from this chair and kind of just going over everything. These are just, again, a little bit of a centerpiece per se. Like I always have my car in front of me. They're just for show. They don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things other than existing. So today, to I think finish off our spring tuning series, our shock tuning series. Spring should be the very last thing to go over. Now, obviously, like I've said in previous videos, there are definitely ways to get significantly more in depth than what we have. But for the purpose of this series, this is just going to be, getting the information to you, not necessarily going over the super technical end of things, but going over kind of what to look for, what the car is going to do, and when to make some of these changes at the track onto your vehicle, rather than super explain like, oh, this is why this happens. Because that's, way above my pay grade. I'm not that smart. I'm smart enough to tell you what what it's going to do, though. Kind of. I definitely didn't read a book for this. But for our springs, there are going to, of course, be 2 ends of the spectrum. There's going to be the soft end and the hard end. And today I'm going to tell you when you're going to kind of use both. Now, we're going to go over kind of the base characteristics of each, then kind of what styles of tracks to look for, and then what kind of spring range you're usually going to work in. So as just a general rule of thumb, springs are going to be more of a track dependent thing rather than like a temperature dependent thing like we talked about when we went over our shock oil, because as it gets warmer or colder, shock oil viscosity will change. The springs, though, because they are primarily supporting the vehicle and your vehicle weight isn't going to change a whole lot, you're not going to necessarily tune it per day necessarily. You're going to mostly just tune it kind of based on the actual track surface that you're on. So to give just an overview of springs, the kind of face value things to look for is on a softer spring. So let's say you have soft springs all the way around, you're going to notice that you're going to have a lot more weight transfer. So the car is going to want to dive a little bit more, it's going to want to squat a little bit more, and it'll want to roll from side to side a little bit more. Now, in some cases, as long as you don't go to the extremes, this is going to provide more traction for the vehicle. And the other thing it's also going to do is, because it's a softer spring, the shock can move a little bit more freely in the upstroke. So it's going to allow the car to drive a little more level and soak up the bumps better on a bumpy style track. Now, on the other end of the spectrum with a harder springs, it's going to be the exact opposite. As we've gone over many times in this series, lots of times you go from one to the other, you yield opposite effects. So with the harder springs, you're going to have less weight transfer front to back, less roll side to side, and because of that, generally speaking, you will have less traction with it, and it's going to be better on a smoother style track. So at face value, that is what the 2 different kind of ends are going to do for you. Now, for me personally, when I actually go to the track, I'm only going to have a few different spring options with me. I'm going to work kind of in a spring range, and I feel like that having 3 different front and 3 different rear usually covers everything pretty well. Because the springs are mostly just supporting the vehicle, that is their number 1 job, keeping it up, it's not going to be something that you're going to change ultra dramatically from one side to the other, one track to another, because your vehicle weight generally is going to stay the same. It's mostly going to be a matter of, whether it's a higher grip, lower grip, a smooth or a bumpy track. That is going to be the main deciding stuff for the spring option you choose. Now, for me personally, to keep things really simple and straightforward, there's going to be two different style tracks really that you're going to want to look for. For the softer springs, I feel like that something like the indoor track here, it's a little bit tighter, maybe not the most high grip end of things. That is what the softer spring is going to be good for. On the lower grip side, it's going to, of course, allow the car to transfer weight and develop grip a little bit easier with the springs. But it's also going to allow the car to kind of get in and out of turns a little bit faster, because it's going to be able to get weight back on the front end very quickly as you kind of go into those tighter 180 turns. So it's going to be more reactive. And I think on a tighter track, most of the time, that is what you're going to be looking for. You want a car that is going to be quick. Now, obviously, you'll have to be quick on the wheel. You have to make sure that you yourself can catch it, but the fastest car is going to be the one that can get in and out of the turns the fastest. Now, to go to the opposite end, we'll use our outdoor track here, for example, which I don't know if you can see through the door, but it's probably very, very wet out there. The larger tracks are going to be, we're going to see more of that harder spring. Now, obviously, there's a bumpy large track, that can change a little bit, but generally on the bigger tracks, you have more flowy, more sweepy turns. So you need a car that is going to be able to have support throughout those turns. If you go with too soft of a spring on a track that you need to carry a lot of corner speed, it can overroll the car and actually make it feel like there's less grip, because it's going to roll everything onto that outside tire, and it's going to make the car feel like it wants to kind of waggle or diff out, however you want to say it. So having that stiffer spring, having that more support, will allow it to flow around the track a little bit nicer. So to kind of give a quick recap on the times that you're going to mostly see soft or mostly see hard springs, I feel like tighter indoor tracks, you'll always see the softer end of the spectrum, whereas larger, more flowy, sweepy tracks, you're going to see the stiffer end of the spectrum. And then, of course, on the lower grip tracks, generally you'll have a softer spring, and on the higher grip tracks, generally, and again, there's going to be kind of a range here. Generally, you might have a little bit stiffer of a spring. And the reason why I very, very specifically on the high grip end of things say there's a range is because if you go with too stiff of a spring, even though it's technically taking away grip, because you already have so much grip, it's putting a lot of force on those outside tires. And if it can't roll anything onto those, then it's going to want to traction roll more easily. So even though you'll use a stiffer spring on something like that, you definitely need to make sure that you still have a car that can roll through the turns to some extent, or else you effectively are on a 2x4 and your car is just going to traction roll and flip off the track. So that is the one caveat to look for there when going to a super high grip track. You definitely have a little bit finer of a line. Obviously, there's lots of other things to tune other than just the springs and the shocks, but that is something to look out for. Now, the other thing to look out for is if you are running, let's say, a lighter shock fluid, especially in the back of your vehicle, and you feel like the car is squatting too much, but instead of changing your shock oil, you just go to a stiffer spring. Even though you're kind of going in the right direction, you're going in the right direction with the wrong piece. That's going to be more, of that shock oil thing. But what you're going to notice as it's going around the track is because you're mostly just riding on spring at that point, the oil isn't really doing a whole lot. You'll get a little bit of a bouncy pogo stick effect. So definitely, make sure you don't go too light on oil and then also go too stiff on spring. Usually, if you stick with, like I said in the shock oil video, that kind of, I think it was like 100 CST range, usually in that kind of up and down area. If you follow that and then also follow that kind of 3-spring rule for front and rear, then you probably aren't going to run into that a whole lot, because you're working with a smaller group of variables, and you're working with the group of variables that are going to work and going to be consistent. You're not testing extreme things. So I know I just threw a lot of information at you. So just like always, If for whatever reason, you feel like you need the kind of more text description of it, or you just are looking for more information, definitely leave a comment down below. I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as possible on it. As for anything, especially with shocks, things are so ungodly confusing, but that does go over the basics of our spring tuning guide. So definitely, if you haven't checked out our past videos, whether it be roll center or just other bass tuning stuff or the rest of the shock series, definitely check out the entire Let's Talk playlist that is going to be on our YouTube channel. This video that you're watching right now should be in the playlist, so it should be relatively easy to access. But we have concluded, I believe, with the basic end of shocks. So we will see you guys for an all-new Let's Talk video at some point. I might go ahead and swap up our Tuesday video a little bit now that we've kind of reached the end of our next chapter. But before I leave you guys officially today, we'll go over our waffle rules, regulations, ticket sales, all the information on that right now. And I will see you in the next one. So here we are back in the hot seat to go over our holiday mega waffle of our two TLR vehicles here. And of course, as we said before, the waffle gives you the opportunity to win not one, but 2 kits. And the stakes have gotten even higher now. So to go over the base rules of things, the base sales of things, whatever you want to call it, there are going to be tickets on sale for $10 a ticket. And we will go ahead and close those sales on December the 22nd. And we'll announce the winner on December the 23rd, which should be a Monday, I believe. So slightly different schedule on the video end of things. And a $10 ticket gives you the opportunity to potentially win not 1, but 2 kits, which of course is the 22X4 and the 8XE 2.0. And to add to it now, as you can see in front of me, generously donated from a local racer here, we have a Hobbywing XR8 Pro Gen 3 and a USRC steering servo. Now, I don't know about you, but for a $10 ticket, I feel like that's not too much for the potential to win over $1,000 worth of product here. So if you are interested in jumping in on that, like I said, ticket sales will end on December the 22nd, and then we'll find out our winner on the 23rd of this month. The link for buying a ticket will, of course, be down in the description below. You can buy as many tickets as you want. And as always, best of luck to you, and we'll see you in the next one.